So that actually brings up a very interesting brings up a very interesting point, right? When is long enough at a company? It used to be, we talked about this a lot. 6 years ago when we started recruiting, it used to be 5+ years was considered long term. Then about 3 to 5 years is considered long term. Then someone said 2.5 years is about average tenure, right? Shorter than a car lease, right?
Right.
And you just said, if someone could stick it out for about a year, year and a half, that's crazy, right? What point is long enough?
So I don't know how crazy that is. At a year, at least a year, and the company's seeing value, the candidate has something to put on his resume. I think, like we were talking about when the camera was off, there has to be some kind of a balance.
Sure.
If a candidate is too focused on having that independent contractor mindset, they're not doing anything to build their career. If you just have all these short stints at different companies, you're not learning anything. Each stint at a company has to be a building block in your career that takes you from level A to level B, which is going to then in turn make you more marketable for your next position. And if you're just bouncing around, you're not going to get that. You're going to find yourself in the same spot.
Whenever I did nonprofit consulting before this, we used to say that quantity drives quality. And what I mean by that is that just because you go out and you talk to these different companies doesn't mean you have to take the job.
Right.
Every job change you make should be a very strategic job change. You don't change for the sake of changing. I wouldn't tell somebody to change just because they go, oh, this is a cool company. Well, are you going to get career growth out of it? Are you going to take a step forward in your career? The nice thing about that is, in theory, your skills should buffer your ability to move too quickly. So for you to be able to move from software engineer to senior engineer, you should have to spend some time in one company, gain that skill set to be ready to be a senior engineer. Then before you take that step from senior engineer to either lead or program manager or dev manager, you should have to gain a whole new skill set, therefore buffering the time you have to move. Whenever I talk about quantity driving quality, the more roles that you look at, the more companies you know about, just the more stuff you see come across your plate, the better chance you have of really understanding when that very perfect role comes across and you go, that is what it takes for me to make a significant, valuable, meaningful step forward in my career. If you take and you wait until you get laid off, you have a very small pool of roles to choose from at that time in your career. You have what's on the plate then. If you look at it over the course of 2 years plus, you're going to have a much larger window of which to choose from, and you get to make a much more strategic and ideally much more helpful advancement in your career by doing that.
If you're a married man and you've been with your wife for 2 years, and you see a woman that's a little bit more attractive than your wife, you see some sort of potential, are you going to go talk to her and interview her for a potential relationship down the road, or a good relationship?
We compare marriages
it just doesn't work.
Career, but it's not the same thing.
It's a false analogy.
A marriage is supposed to be a lifetime commitment. A job will never be a lifetime commitment.
We don't work for pensions anymore. It's just like my grandpa went to work for a grocery distributor, fresh out of the war, and he retired at that company 12 years ago. True story. That just doesn't happen anymore. It's not the generation that we live in. And frankly, he retired as 2 steps up from wherever he entered 50 years later. That's a quintessential story of why you don't do that. The marriage analogy just doesn't work anymore. You're not working for a pension. You're not staying in a company for 50 years.
So it's not about loyalty to a company. It's about loyalty to the skills you're building at that moment in time.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think at about 2 years in, if there are no immediate signs that the company is not doing well, if the writing is not on the wall, if you're happy doing the work, if you still believe in the vision of the company, then you don't need to put yourself at where you're doing all three, you're actively looking at new things, you're networking every weekend. You don't have to do that on a level 10. You can scale it down a bit. At about the 2-year mark in, maybe heat it up a little bit. See if there's something better out there for you. Put a little bit more effort into it, because at least at 2 years in, you've done something with this company. You've been through a few different development life cycles. You know what you're doing. You have something to build on. You're not just collecting a paycheck for a few weeks, coding a few things, and then you're out.
Right. We've talked a lot about just the mindset of people, and I think people get it, right? Transition into more of a perpetual opportunist as compared to look only when I need to look, right? As far as the actual brass tacks, right? What should I specifically be doing? One specific example I think is really cool. I spoke with this lady yesterday. She's a phenomenal web developer, great experience. I tried to help her with a job search. About 6 months ago, I ended up not being able to help her. She joined a startup. Startup just lost funding, got canned pretty much, right? Sucks, right? But it's happening. It's going to continue to happen. Between Monday and yesterday, when I spoke with her 4 days, she has 12 opportunities in front of her. Crazy, right?
Right.
What's the first thing you think she did?
put her resume on Monster.
Not at all, though, right? That's
No.
not at all what she did. What she's been doing throughout her career is maintaining a very active blog. Therefore, like, creating for herself, like, the, perception of I am a subject matter expertise. I talk about what I do. I talk about my opinions about the marketplace, yada, yada, yada. People listen to me. So that when I tell them I'm actively looking for something, people respond, and that's how all these opportunities are now becoming available. I think classic example of, like, being a perpetual opportunist. She wouldn't take our call 3 months ago when we were talking about different opportunities that were available, because at that moment in time she was very vested with her current employer.
Right.
But because she was taking all those steps, like maintaining an active blog, actively twittering, actively interacting with, like, others in her community, when the time came for her to, like, actively start a job search, she was that much more prepared.
The opportunity.
No resumes on Monster, sometimes to call from us, sometimes not, but because of the blog, because of the twittering, just because she was out there in the community, things came to her when timing was right.
Yeah, classic.
Well,
I mean, perfect. Nicely done.
Great.
I don't know what more you say.
Yeah,
about
what
it,
do
other
you say?
than it is also the one of those things where, and that's the best way, I think, maybe when we're talking about in the spirit of, like, the Lehman Brothers collapse, how do you protect yourself against that? And maybe we got a little off topic in this whole conversation, but that's a great way to protect yourself against, I went to work for a company, 6 months later went by, I'll be the first one to say you should still be heads down, focused on your new job. You can still protect yourself against a collapse without having to be on all three fronts.
So do all those things. Just because you do all those things doesn't mean you're an active job seeker, or you have to interview, or you have to take a job. It just means that you're out there and ready to do something about it when you need to do something about it.
Right.
So start a blog, have a very detailed profile on LinkedIn, take calls from people like us just to stay in the know. We'll talk to you because we're opportunistic, right?
What does 95% of the people that we pick up the phone say? I'm not actively looking for a job. Perfect.
Fine.
Great. That puts us on the same page. Now let's talk about what would make you consider something opportunistically.
Right, and we talk about different opportunities in the market. We talk about, like, different things that they could be doing to grow their career. We'll pitch opportunities to them in the event that they are the right next step for them. When they are, they jump. When they're not, they say, till next time.
It's the same thing for us as well. You have to look at trends in the market. We're not the same recruiting firm that we were 4 years ago, not even close. I mean, if we were still, if people were still out there placing Pascal developers, it'd probably be out of business at this point.
Sure.
So it's the same thing for us, it's the same thing for our candidates. Look for trends in the market, know what's hot out there, learn about your marketplace, continue to develop your skill set outside of work, learn new technologies, and stay marketable. I mean, you are a product. As faceless and cold as it sounds, you're a product. Make yourself a marketable product.
Right.
Yeah.
On the complete flip side, how do you explain to your employer why you have an active LinkedIn profile, why you maintain an active blog, why you are at all these networking events, to an employer who maybe does still have that old school mentality? I mean, like, we have 4 different generations in the workforce right now. I know I'm starting like this whole different topic, but baby boomer generation for sure is long-term loyalty to the company.
Really?
Gen X is in it for me. Gen Y is just in it for the lifestyle.
I completely agree. We have a bunch of different generations in the workforce, but I really don't think the baby boomers are that much in it for the long term.
I just spoke with a guy this morning who's like, I'm 50. I want the next place that I join to be where I retire. I'm like, but you don't really believe that you're going to retire there. He's like, well, I'd like to. I'd like to think that. I'd like to find that place. I'm also, like, in tune with the fact that job changes every 2 years, but I'd like to.
Okay, that's fair. I think that maybe they see value in stability, whereas a lot of people, maybe more my generation, join a company thinking, all right, we're going to be here for a couple of years, and then I'm going to be bored, and let's move on.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, but if you're an employer, do you want to hire somebody you think realistically is going to leave in a couple of years?
Sure, because you're going to leave before they do, because you've been there for 1.5 years already.
Yeah.
I mean, really, like, I mean, I know that sounds a little sarcastic, but the truth, the point of the matter is that, yeah, I still say probably the window realistically is more 2 to 5. I know I said a year, but realistically, the window probably still in that 2 to 5 year range on an average. Well, maybe 2.5 is average, but that 10-year, I see a lot of professionals go in that 1 to 5 year range.
Yeah. I've had a company say to me, if we can get a year out of this guy, we'll be happy.
Yeah. I've had companies say to me that we're looking to keep this guy for at least 3 years, and we won't hire anybody who's made a job change in less than 2 years.
Like, okay, sure. Oh, right. Okay. History is the best predictor of the past, but.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think that if I'm an employer, I think I'm still asking for 2 years out of somebody.
History is the best predictor of the future.
Of the future. That's right.
So I think that and how do you explain that? if I don't know if they don't get it, I think you have more concerns than like, or why are, I guess I'm gonna ask the question of why are you explaining it to them?
Right.
Like I would say, like, if you walked up to me and you were like, why do you maintain an active LinkedIn profile aside from the fact that I'm a recruiter, and why is your resume online? Like, I'd be concerned about the fact that I had to explain that to you.
Yeah.
Like, it's my career would simply be my answer.
Right.
Without
And I
a
don't-
doubt, the older the person, the older the mentality, the more they're gonna have that focus of, yeah, I really want to stay there for the long term. The younger it is, the less the loyalty is gonna be there. Without a doubt.
I'm with you on that. So I want to hear other people's stories of being in perpetual job search mode, what's worked, what's not worked, what's gotten you in trouble in the eyes of a potential employer. Tell us about what's on your guys' mind, what everyone's doing to kind of prepare for that.
Perfect. Till next
Sounds
week.
awesome.
Until next week.